Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Conversations with Cabral. I am here today with the Melissa Ambrosini. So great to have you here on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me back. I'm so excited.
Yes, you are one of our very few repeat guests. As a colleague, as a friend, someone that I've got to really know over the last few years, it's always great to be able to have these face-to-face conversations. I know that the both of us live very busy lives in our career, with our families, all of that. But the nice thing is we got to meet in person for the first time last March, right as the pandemic was just kind of coming into full swing. It was actually quite a stressful time. I was fortunate enough to be able to put on an event over in Sydney, Australia. You spoke at that event, which was absolutely amazing. People loved it. And then we got to connect with you, with Nick, with some friends, family, had a really nice, healthy, organic, vegan-based picnic, and got to meet each other for the first time there. So that was absolutely amazing. But I wanted to have you on, and I would love you to share a little bit about what your year has been like over these past few months. And then, of course, we're going to kind of progress into what you have going on right now as well.
Yes, I can't believe that was almost a year ago. My gosh, that's just wild. And that was so fun meeting in person because, like you said, we have formed this relationship online for so many years. You have been my physician and my husband's physician for so many years now, maybe like 3 or 4. I can't even remember. And so we have spoken so many times, and you've been on my podcast many, many times. I think you and Nick are like the most repeated guests on my show. So it's beautiful to be here, and it was so awesome to be able to connect with you in person. I think there's nothing better than that in-person connection. And then, like you mentioned, we went into lockdown and everything happened with COVID. And although it was such a different experience for so many people, I really enjoyed the slowing down part of that. I really enjoyed the simplifying of my life. And that's definitely what COVID had inspired within Nick and I, is to really get clear on, well, what really matters, and almost do like a little life check-in, a life and business check-in. And so, I'm grateful for that. And during that time, I wrote this book that's out now called Comparisonitis. And I was working on my podcast and I fell pregnant, which is really exciting. So that's where I'm at right now.
It's amazing. Yeah. And that's why I know the pandemic has been hard for a lot of people. I mean, myself included, with our family and schooling for our girls. And, it's challenging. We had to make a lot of changes in our own life, not just in our trip when we were over in Australia, which we had to cut short. But I think there is a silver lining, and a lot of people have done what you've done, where they've taken a step back, did almost like a life assessment. What do we need? What do we don't need? What can we be happy with? Or what's kind of holding us back from that greater level of happiness? And so people have let go of a lot of baggage, emotional and financial and otherwise, that they simply don't need. And so it's always great to hear, not only are you doing that in your own life, but of course, with your platform, you're able to teach it to others. So I guess this opportunity too to present itself, which, by the way, although we've spoken many times, congratulations for you and Nick on the birth of your baby. It's going to be absolutely amazing, and so happy for the two of you as well. But you're also now you're putting out. Is this your 4th book?
Yes, this is my 4th book, and I wanted to also tell everyone that you played a big role in helping us get pregnant too. So I want to thank you for that. You really did. Nick and I both did all of your detoxes. We worked with you for years before we got pregnant. And I think that's really important, that you do the physical detoxing and you also, work on your mindset and you look at all of the areas of your life. But I just wanted to also say that you played a huge role in preparing mine and Nick's bodies to get pregnant.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's, we work with many women inside of our practice. We're very confidential about what we do, so people will never hear about it. But if there are women out there that are looking to get pregnant and having difficulty, or they're simply looking to get their body in the best and healthiest position, there are things that you can do. And you can look at for those heavy metals. You can look at those gut issues. You can look at overall stress. And so, I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think it is a service, whether you work with us or another IHP or a naturopathic doctor, anyone out there, is that there is always an answer, right? And you can always figure it out. You will figure it out if you stay patient. You're able to put in that time and that work. So once again, though, it's obviously it's on you. It's on Nick, and you did the work. And congratulations again. I'd love to be able to talk about this new book, Comparisonitis, though. I got an advanced copy. It just was released yesterday, May 5th. So I'm excited about that as well for you. But one of the big things about writing a book, and this is now your 4th book, it's almost like, I wouldn't say that it's like the birth of a child, but you are literally putting in probably a year of work, right? Leading up to this. What led to this book being written? I always love to hear the backstory on it. Like, why write another book? You put so much effort into this book. It's not like the book is there to make you a lot of money or anything like that. It's about expression. So why was this book created in the first place?
Yeah, you're so right. Like, books are, people say they're expensive business cards. You don't do it to make money, but for me, it's definitely a creative expression. I love writing. I love being a writer. I love expressing myself through the written word. I always have. And so, how this book actually came about was, and I share this story at the start of the book. It's like the opening chapter, where I am on the loo with my phone and I'm scrolling Instagram. And this is like really embarrassing to even admit this, but it's true. And here I am comparing myself to a New York Times bestselling author who's hit the list again for like the 100th time. And I'm looking at this and I'm comparing myself in a very unhealthy, toxic way. Like, why can't my books hit the New York Times? Like, what's wrong with me? Why is my writing not good enough? And that internal inner mean girl dialogue, really started to go off. And anyway, I finished in the bathroom and I came upstairs and started working on my computer, and I opened an email, and in that email was a beautiful email from a girl who follows me, and she was confessing that she was comparing herself to me because she's writing her first book, and she was saying, Melissa, do you have any tips? And I'm writing my first book and I'm so nervous and I want it to be as good as your books. And I just had this light bulb moment where I thought, everyone is comparing themselves to everyone else, and in a very unhealthy way. And as you know, mental health issues are on the rise: depression, anxiety, panic attacks, and suicide. And 2 years ago, I lost one of my best girlfriends to suicide. She was dealing with severe depression and mental health issues, which started in her high school years. She was very heavily bullied. And I witnessed all of that. I watched what she went through. I watched the struggles that she had from comparisonitis. And I realized in that moment that because of social media, which is an amazing tool, it's amazing for us to be able to connect and to share our work, but it has led us to fall into the trap of this very unhealthy, toxic comparisonitis. And I know men do it as well, but I feel like women do it a lot more. We are exposed to people's highlight reels, which is what social media is, and which allows us to fall into this trap very, very easily. So in the book, I talk about strategies and ways. It's really a book about deep, deep radical self-love and self-acceptance, because when you have deep self-love and self-acceptance, you don't compare yourself to other people. But I give lots of tools and strategies and things like that to really help people use these platforms for good and not fall into that toxic comparisonitis spiral that we can so easily fall into. And I definitely think, I talk about there's upward comparison and downward comparison in the book. Like I talk about the healthy comparison and then there's unhealthy comparison. And, healthy comparison is you're running on the treadmill at the gym and you're going for it, and someone jumps on next to you and they put up the speed and they put up the incline, and you look to them and you compare yourself and you think, oh, wow, well, if she can run like that, well, maybe I can. And you push yourself in a good way. And then you finish your workout and you're like, wow, I just proved to myself that I could run longer and faster and harder than I've ever before. So that's like an example of healthy comparison. And we all know what unhealthy comparison is. And that is what most of us do on a daily basis. Children are getting phones so young these days, like crazily young. And they are exposed to this at a very vulnerable, their brains haven't even fully developed age. And so we need to talk about this now, and we need to implement some of these strategies now so that not only can we help ourselves, but we can help our children and the future generations.
I completely agree. And that was actually a question I was going to ask you, is about these upward and downward comparisons, because I remember, even growing up, let's say first jobs out of school, working with people that were very, very successful. For whatever reason, I allowed their success to inspire me rather than judge them and be like, why are they so lucky, those particular types of things. I almost saw it as like, well, because I knew some of them and I knew their backstory. And so I knew that they struggled a lot in life. And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but eventually they were to become successful. So I kind of saw the struggle with the success, but I do agree. And again, I can't say that I'm immune to this by any means, is you see someone typically with some level of success that you aspire to. And I read it as now, again, like a former me would have been like, well, they don't deserve it or whatever it might be. But now I can say, and I can look at it, and simply because this is the type of work that we all need to go through. And I almost look at it and just say, good for them. Like that's amazing. I don't know the struggles they went through. I don't know how much work they put in, but what I do know is that anyone that's gotten there, it probably wasn't handed to them, that they put in that work. And because I just feel like if I give off a little bit more of that, then I say, okay, good for them. And if they can achieve it, hey, maybe I can too. What are your thoughts on that type of a mindset for people?
Yeah, there's a whole chapter, and I'm glad you brought this up. There's a whole chapter in the book called Fixing Fractured Friendships. And what I mean by that is what you've done there is you've turned your comparison or your envy or your jealousy, whatever you want to call it, into inspiration, which is the place that we want to get to. So some people, they will see it and they'll feel jealous or envious, and then they spiral into that comparisonitis and they go into that dark, maybe depressed state. But what we want to do is do what you did, is see it and go and use it as fuel, as inspiration. That's where we really grow. And another important thing to mention is that if you can see it in someone else, that means you have it within yourself. So if you can't see it, you don't have it within yourself. So if you can see someone following their dreams and launching their dream business or career, and it makes you feel a need to compare or feel jealous or envious, that's because you have that within you, yet you may be denying it. You may be suppressing it. So that's why it's triggering you, right? So we need to become aware of that and go, okay, this is triggering me. So-and-so is triggering me because they're doing the exact thing that I want to do, yet I'm not doing it because, my inner mean girl is telling me that I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or who do I think I am to write a book or start a podcast, And so we can use it as fuel and inspiration instead. And that's the place, and I talk about this in the book, that's the place I want everybody to get to, is using it as inspiration. Otherwise, the alternative is spiraling into toxic comparisonitis.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more. You broke up this book, which is very interesting for me, almost like a disease.
Yeah.
This toxic disease, comparisonitis, which again, if we add itis to the end of anything, it's essentially a chronic inflammatory based illness, which I really like, because the more you compare yourself to others, the more it festers. And it really is that comparison, or that envy, or that jealousy, or the wishing unwell to someone else is honestly the poison that you meant for someone else, but you drink yourself, right? That's how the saying goes. And it's the truth, because they have no idea that they did anything wrong, and probably they didn't do anything wrong, but it infects you. And that envy, that jealousy, that anger eats at you, and it wears on you. And obviously it can make you physically sick as well. But you broke this book very nicely up to, in a few different parts, but the first three are the problem, the prescription, and then the remedy. Talk a little bit about each one, why it was set up this way, and how we work through these problems, because as you said, mental health is as important as physical health.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I did want it to, I really did want to put it under the microscope and look at it a bit more seriously by making it like a little, a disease, because it is really serious. It is serious. And it's like you said, if we don't look at it, it's going to fester inside of us and cause inflammation in our body. And it affects everything in our life. It affects not just us, but it affects all of our relationships. It affects how we do our work. It affects everything. So the first section is really about looking at it, putting it under the microscope. Like, what are the issues? Why do we need to take this seriously? I give a lot of data and statistics on the rates and the rise of depression, anxiety, panic attacks, the suicide rates. It's through the roof. And these are not things that we talk about. Everyone kind of turns away from suicide. They don't want to look at it. But after losing one of my closest girlfriends to it, who was my age, the most beautiful looking girl, so intelligent, incredibly intelligent, had everything going for her. She had a beautiful partner who was about to propose, like everything. And everyone kind of turns away from it because it's too taboo and it's confronting. But we need to look at it, because if we don't have these sorts of conversations and support each other and help each other, then we could potentially, if we do have these conversations, we could save a life, right? And so that's what the whole first section is about, is like really looking at it and why we need to look at it. And I talk about what this is doing to our future generations. Like Nick and I joke that our daughter, I'm like, she's not getting a phone until she's 55. And and Nick's like, okay, babe, like and I'm like, all right, 18. I'll go 18 then. I'll go 18. And he's like, all right, if you can do it, I will support you no matter what. But and I had Cal Newport, who wrote deep work on my podcast recently, and he has 2 children, and he was saying that his children don't have phones or anything like that. And if there gets a point where they're 15 or 16 and they need a phone, he's like, I'm just going to get them one of those old school Nokias, or, like where they can just make a phone call or send a text. They don't need smartphones. Like, they don't. And so, I think it's really important that we look at this now. We look at why this is so important, so we can help ourselves and so we can help the future generations. So that's the first section. And then the next section really goes into all the prescriptions. Actually, was that the next section? Prescriptions and then remedies? Yes.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So the prescriptions is the next section. And so I give lots of tools and strategies, lots and lots of tips, tricks, so many things to really help you. There's a whole chapter on social media. There's a whole chapter on fixing fractured friendships, and really implementing some of the things that I talk about in the book is really about setting healthy boundaries for yourself so that you can really thrive and achieve what it is that you want to achieve in the world. And then the next section, the third section, the remedies, I talk a lot about parenting in there. So there's a chapter called CPR, which is all about conscious parenting remedies. And this is for anyone, not even if you're a parent, you will get so much out of this for yourself because you'll be able to implement the things that I talk about in there. So it's really a book for every single human being. We have all compared ourselves. We have compared ourselves from the beginning of time. We've used comparison, but back then, it was more like maybe when we were cavemen, we would compare, how someone climbed up a tree and got something, and we're like, oh, they did that. Oh, that was quite successful. Or, we kind of compared in a healthier way, but now we are exposed to so much toxic comparison and we need to look at it. And this book is for anyone who wants to really heal that within themselves, who wants to find that deep level of self-love and happiness from within, because ultimately that's what we all deserve and that's our birthright. And I think there's like 1 in 400 trillion chances that we were born, right? That is mind-blowing, and that just proves that you are a miracle, that your father's sperm, your mother's egg came together, like 1 in 400 trillion chances. Like, that is mind-blowing. And when you truly remember that you are a miracle and that you are so unique and so precious and sacred, there is absolutely no need to compare yourself to anyone else. Like, when you truly know that and embody that, there's no need to compare yourself. There's no need to look right and left and compare. You just stay in your own lane and you just move on your own path and go forward in the direction of your dreams, because you know how truly magical you are.
I want to, and I want to get to that too, more about how we can begin this healing process. But let's say people are saying, I know what you're saying. There are definitely people I look at in social media saying, wow, they have such an amazing life. Everything is so perfect in their relationships. Their work always seems to be going well, et cetera, et cetera. When again, we know that we're only seeing the highlight reel, as you put it, which I think is a great way to say it. Because sometimes people will show or write a post of where things aren't going well. And I think that those are oftentimes some of their biggest posts, where they're a little bit more vulnerable and they can show that with others. And I think that is good. And if we step back, we know that this can't be anyone's life, because typically we look around us, we know our friends, we know our family. Nobody has a life like that, right? Nobody has just the highlight reel. There's typically an ebb and flow. But let's take a little step back. And I know that you give a nice little assessment. How deep are you into this comparisonitis? Well, let's talk about that. What are a couple of the symptoms that someone would begin to experience or feel or say when they do go on social media or they do look at a friend or family member? What would be a couple of the key words that they might be using or saying?
Yeah, I've got 10 main symptoms, which I talk about in the book, but we don't have to go through all of them. I'll just go through a couple of them. One of the first symptoms is that negative, toxic self-talk. I'm not good enough, or who do I think I am, or I can't do that, or I can't launch the podcast or the book. So if you are in that state, then potentially you could be, suffering from comparisonitis. So really tune in with your internal dialogue and work out what is going on upstairs for you. So that's another one. So that's one. Another one would be feeling behind, so like, all my friends are getting married. All my friends are having babies. All my friends have started businesses. Everyone's traveling. Everyone's bought a house. That feeling of behind could very much mean that you are suffering from comparisonitis. And I remember, I met Nick when I was 27. I got married when I was 28. That is quote unquote later in life for a lot of people. So when I met Nick and when I was getting married, all my friends had been married and were like onto their second kid by that time. All my school friends, this is. And now I'm having my first child and all my friends are having their third. And, I could have very much fallen into that comparison spiral and thought, I'm behind, or I really should hurry up and find someone and settle down, which I just do not like that term, settle down and find a partner and buy a house and have kids. I could have very much fallen into that, and I'm so glad I didn't, and I know a lot of people do, but my priority and my core values at that time in my life was building my career. And I wanted to write books, and I wanted to travel and speak on stages, and I wanted to start a podcast. So I stayed in my own lane, which is one of the tips I talk about in the book. I, put my little blinkers on, and I didn't worry about keeping up with anyone else. I just stayed in my own lane. So if you are feeling like oh, I'm behind, then that could be an indicator that you may be suffering from comparisonitis. And another main symptom is like linking your self-worth to things outside of you. So I'm worthy because I've got this partner or this house or this car or this item, this accolade. When we start linking our self-worth to external things, that is like a steep curve down to comparisonitis. So we really do need to be mindful if that's something that we do, become aware of that, and then realize that maybe we are suffering from comparisonitis.
Yeah, I think that's a great point as well. I really like the one where you are saying if you feel like you're behind, because we've all been there for sure. For me, it's like, well, I feel like, okay, now I'm going back to school in my late 20s. Everyone else has already graduated. Like, okay, now I'm going back. And so without a doubt, I've been there for sure. And what about for you too? I mean, we've chatted about this before, but you were a professional dancer in Paris, away from your home, with arguably one of the biggest comparisonitis-based industries. What was that like? And did you ever escape that, or did you just have to leave that job to get away from that type of comparison-based, again, industry? Because that's so challenging. I mean, that's like social media and modeling to the highest level, and you're on stage in front of other people, and every night you need to be at your best. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So I started dancing when I was 3 years old, and I absolutely loved it. I loved performing. I loved the self-expression. It's the ultimate presence, It's like you can't be texting on your phone and dancing on stage at the same time. Like you're really present. You're in the moment. And I think that's why I loved it so much. And I started doing it professionally when I got into high school. I was getting paid to do it, which was amazing. And then later on, I started doing acting and TV presenting and singing as well. But when I was 20, I moved to Paris. I got accepted into the Moulin Rouge. There was about 500 Australian, Aussie dancers, female dancers that auditioned, and I was one of 5 that got in, which was just amazing. And I moved to Paris for a year, and we did 2 shows a night, 6 nights a week. And yes, my comparisonitis was, it was very much there before that. However, when I moved to Paris, it got exacerbated very severely, because for the first time in my life, I had witnessed the most beautiful, stunning Amazonian goddess-like women just stare at themselves in the mirror and call themselves the most awful things. It was a very, for me, it was not the best environment to be in. I was also quite unhappy within myself. I was not eating well. I was drinking a lot. I was partying. I was just not taking care of myself. And I started taking very, very toxic, unhealthy fat-burning pills. I started making myself sick. And that's when I really, my relationship with my body went downhill a lot. And so that's not why I left. I left because after a year of doing 2 shows a night, 6 nights a week, kicking your legs above your head, your body gets quite sore. So, I decided that was enough for me. But then I moved to London for 2 years, and I continued dancing and performing. And it's still, continued very severely. And then after those 2 years in London, my visa expired and I had to move home to Australia, which I was really devastated about because I didn't want to leave. And then when I left and came back to Australia, I spiraled into such a deep, dark depression and experienced anxiety and panic attacks and was put on antidepressants and ended up in hospital with a whole host of physical and mental health issues. And that was the point in my life where I went, something has to shift. I am so unhappy. I am so unwell. I'm 24 years old and I am so sick of, I thought, why is God punishing me? Like, that's literally what I thought. I thought, why is this? Surely isn't how we're meant to live our life. Surely this isn't what's meant to happen. So I made radical shifts and I got healthy and happy again. That was my goal. There was something deep within me, which was my intuition at the time, but I didn't know what my intuition was back then. But something deep within me said, if you get healthy and happy again, you'll live a life beyond your wildest dreams. And I just made it my commitment to get healthy and happy again. And I did every single thing I possibly could to do that. And I started to feel better very, very quickly. And yeah, this was over 10 years ago now.
What were some of the mental health-based processes that you worked through in order to go from someone that was in that dark place in order to be able to achieve the life that you, of course, have now? And I know it doesn't happen overnight, but it is so challenging because we might have a vision for ourselves, but we have no idea how we're going to get there. And we have to live on faith alone. And that's such a hard thing to do for a lot of people, is because you have no idea if you'll ever get there, never mind how you'll get there. And it really is a leap of faith. And it's the faith is the best way that I can put it, but you have to have faith. So what did you do to begin to at least start that process? Did you rely on family, friends, practitioners? Like what did that look like for you?
So the first thing, the lowest hanging fruit for me was my health. I needed to sort that out because I didn't have it. I was in hospital with chronic fatigue. I had cold sores all over my face, in my mouth, down my throat. I had hives all over my body. I had adrenal fatigue. I had hormonal imbalances. Like, I was just a mess. And so the lowest hanging fruit was sorting my health out, which is what I did. So I went and studied holistic nutrition. And then whilst I was doing that, I was realizing that, okay, so I'm starting to drink smoothies and clean up my diet and take out the gluten and the dairy and the sugar and all these things. And I started to feel really good and have energy and lose this inflammation and this bloat that I had around my face, like a puffiness. I just had this puffiness always. And I was like, wow, I feel amazing. I'm just going to keep going. But then I realized that no matter how many green smoothies I was drinking, that I still had this really loud inner mean girl that was saying, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, who do you think you are, you'll never get out of debt, you'll never meet the guy, all those things. And so that's when I started talking about on my website, this is like back when no one really even had blogs, I started talking about my inner mean girl. And this led me down this path of limiting beliefs and rewiring the brain and Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and all of that stuff. And so I dove completely headfirst into the spiritual, personal development, self-help world. I read every book that I possibly could. I went to every seminar and workshop. I worked with healers, coaches, mentors. I just dove headfirst into it all because I started to feel good. I remember reading Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life in hospital. So someone sent me that whilst I was in hospital. My mum and my dad were by my side. And I remember turning to my mum and saying, why didn't you teach me this? Like, why didn't you teach me that we create our own reality and that we are the masters of our life? Like, I was just so... like, my mind was blown and I just could not believe that I didn't know this stuff. Well, I mean, we all know it deep within, but like I couldn't believe that it had taken me 24 years to remember the truth of who I was, right? And 24 is still quite young. Like some people don't get there at all, or they get there at 60 or 70. And so I'm glad that I had that wake up call earlier in life. And I just dove headfirst. And I also started yoga and meditation. And so when I was meditating, I started to feel so amazing that I just was like, I've got to keep doing this, and I've got to keep doing this. And I have meditated pretty much since that moment, twice a day, and absolutely love it. And I feel like if you are struggling with any sort of mental health issue, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, anything, stress, anything, meditation is so key. I know you and I, you love your binaural beats. I do as well. A lot of my meditations are infused with binaural beats, which is amazing. I just think that we live in a world where stress is just so common and we're exposed to it so much. So if you aren't doing some sort of meditation practice, then now is such an incredible time to start, because it's only going to help you mentally, but it's also going to help you physically, and it's going to, create beautiful relationships in your life. It's just going to help every area of your life.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I love, and I didn't know, even asking that story, I didn't actually even know that you worked in London before and you had to, visa expired, had to move back to Australia. So you weren't even able to do what you loved anymore where you wanted to do it. But I do love that. And again, I didn't know where that was even going to go, is that you used what you had at the time. And a lot of people are trying to work on mental health through mental health strategies alone. And what I can tell you is this, and this is what I've seen be the most successful. Yes, you do need to do the therapy or the other types of work. However, your physiology absolutely affects your psychology. And so the easier thing to change is, believe it or not, nutrition. And it's exercise. Like, these are things you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You could change those foods. Even if you said, listen, I'm only going to do it for 3 weeks. You could do it for 3 weeks. You could do a detox. You could do any of these things. And then, you know what? I'm not going to exercise, but I'm going to walk 10,000 steps a day. I'm going to walk essentially the equivalent to about an hour and a half. You can do those things. And by doing those things, you then be able to get your body healthier. There are lower levels of inflammation. There will be slightly less lower levels of PTSD and anxiety. And so I love that. And the second thing you did is you said, well, you don't have the answers, because if you did, you'd probably be following them. So you reached out and you found blueprints, formulas, mentors, coaches, like someone has the answers, right? And so then, then you start to implement into your life, you start to get well, but then you're uniquely you, right? So then you created your system that's going to work for you. And now, of course, you're teaching that to other people and they're getting the benefit. That's why I love this field, because the top people that I know started out in the worst positions and they were forced to learn this. And now they're able to teach it from a much deeper level. And that, with your previous book, if people don't know, is, Inner Mean Girl. And this is almost, it's not, not just for women as well, but it's almost like a sequel. Like, it's like, okay, now here's the next step. And because this is only going to get worse. Social media, all of these things, the pandemic, it's only making things worse. So I'm really happy that you were able to share that story. And I'd love to hear too about one other part to it, which is you've done a lot. You kind of accomplished that. What do we do about setbacks? Or what do we do like when we get to the next level? So you achieve some level of success, but there's always going to be that next level. And when you get there, it's new to you. And so just like before, you're probably thinking, well, I don't know if I have the right education. I don't know if I'm talented enough. I don't know if I have the right skills. I don't know if I'm good looking enough, whatever it might be. So what do we do? Is the same things, or do we need to up level?
I feel like every time we upgrade, there's like more onion layers that need peeling back. And then we upgrade again, and then there's more that need peeling back. And I choose to not look at anything as a setback. I look at them as like road bumps. You go over a road bump and you can choose to just like, oh, I'm going to go over a road bump and then just stay there and then never not drive forward. But you go over it and you're like, okay, I'm going to keep going anyway. And so, there's new goal, new challenge, new goal, new challenge. It's like you hit that glass ceiling. And I know for me, there's been times in the past where I've thought, really? Like, I thought I'd worked through this. Like, really? Like, this is coming up? Wow. But then I'm like, of course, like, it's another layer to be peeled back. It's another opportunity to dive deeper within myself, okay? And to discover more about myself and to up level. You know, I look at my relationship with Nick. We've been married for, this year will be 8 years. Right? And I think we have gone through so many iterations of and upgrades in our marriage. And, you know, we'll go through a stage where we're like cruising and it's really good. And then something might happen and, you know, we might bicker for a little bit. And then we have a mentoring session with one of our mentors, or we read a book, and then we upgrade, and then it's just beautiful. And, you know, it's always, and same in business, you know, you might be cruising for a bit and then something happens and then you need to upgrade. Same with your health, like every area of your life, you're constantly upgrading, because that is why we're here on earth in these earth suits, is to evolve and grow. And if you are not evolving and growing, you are dying. Like you are dying. Like it's like a plant. If you don't water it, if you don't give it some sunlight and nourish the soil, then it's going to die. And I know people in my life that don't want to evolve. They don't want to grow. They have zero interest in learning and evolution and consciousness and taking responsibility and reading books. Like I know people like that, and that's okay. That's their journey and that's their soul's contract and karma in this lifetime. But for me, I know that we are here to grow and evolve, and anytime that something challenges me, it's an opportunity for me to go deeper within. Like I share in the book that it took us 18 months to get pregnant. They were the most challenging 18 months of my life. You know, there's 3 really challenging things that I've been through in my life. Really, really challenging. One was when I was in 2015, my best friend died very unexpectedly of cancer. The other is trying to get pregnant for 18 months. And the third one for me is really stepping into the role of a step parent has been incredibly stretching for me and has been huge, and so much growth, and so beautiful, but so much growth as well. And so, you know, I am so healthy, and for it to take 18 months, there was times where I was so perplexed and so down and thought, why? But then I would always remember that, Melissa, this isn't about drinking more green smoothies for you. This is about letting go of control. This is about surrendering. This is about trusting. This is about trusting in divine timing and not losing faith and hope. And you and I had many conversations, you know, about this as well. It's like, it wasn't about doing another detox for me. I'd done all of it. It wasn't about that. And I know for some people to get pregnant, it is about that. But for me, it wasn't about that. It was about, this is a spiritual assignment, Melissa. This is going inward. This is really about diving deeper within yourself and looking at your need to control and to have things on your timeline, you know, and you've been such a mentor to me in this. You know, we've had so many conversations where you have said to me, and I'll never forget this. You've said to me many times, Melissa, you have the rest of your life to do everything you want to do. You don't have to do it all this year. And I'm like, yes, but I want to, you know, I want to do it all this year. And that's, you know, you and I are very similar. We're very pitta. We love to achieve. We love to do all of the things all at once. But I don't have to write 17 books in 1 year, and I don't have to do all of the things in 1 year. And you gave me permission to trust in the timing of things. And I remember, you know, that's for my career, that piece of advice you gave me will always stay with me. And I think, you know, with the 18 months of working on calling in our baby, it was very much a reminder to just trust in the process, trust life, trust, and don't lose faith and hope.
100%. And I remember, the first year I absolutely said, yes, let's do the heavy metal detox. Let's do our functional medicine detox. Let's bring up your mineral levels, like those different types of things. But then after a while, and you would email me, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? And I said, you're healthy. You've done everything you need to do. There's nothing more for you to do. Now, when your body is ready, and that has to do a lot of what we just talked about, surrendering, it will happen. And it did. And so again, like I couldn't, for me as a practitioner, it's also hard because I always want to say, here's the next thing, here's the next thing. But I knew the next thing was doing nothing. It was no more. What's the next supplement I should take? Nothing, right? It's nothing. Like because then you think that there's something outside of you, and there was nothing. There's nothing outside of you. And so, that is what we are talking about with comparisonitis, but it's like when you get to that next level, it always means, and you've been saying it, go inside, because there is some blockage within you that is not allowing you to already have that thing in the first place, because you would have already had it. So that's why, I love doing this work as myself. And for me, it's like, how far can I push things? What can I do? And it drives my team crazy sometimes, but it's always because I feel like I've been given a second chance, probably even like a third or fourth or fifth chance. And so it's like, I want to take advantage of that. But really over the last couple of years, I've said, we have time. Like I plan on working for another good 35, 40 years. And if that's the case, let me learn, let me grow, let me evolve. And now for you with this experience too, think about the next book. I know you're not thinking about the next book, but think about that a couple of years from now. What will that be? Well, it's going to be based on, these next couple of years of living. So I think there is time for us to learn, evolve, grow. And that's why I'm excited too for what the future holds for you as well.
Yes. Yeah, me too. And it's just so important that we just stay in our own lane, on our own path, not look left and right and try and keep up with the Joneses or keep up with the Kardashians or keep up with whoever on social media. Like we are all on our own path. And I know social media is amazing, but it can really make us feel like, well, I want to be on, or should I be on that path? Or should I be over on that path? Or no, just stay true to you. Stay on your own path. Do what feels true for you and your family, and go at your own speed as well. I talk about this in the book. Like there's no race to the finish line. Like go at your own speed. Like Stephen was saying, and he said to me so many times, like, you don't have to write all your books this year. Like you can go at your own pace. Like if you want to take 10 years to write a book, take 10 years. Like do what feels good for you. Just don't compare yourself to anyone else and just stay in your own lane, because you are unique. You are so miraculous. You have so much to give and so much to offer. And when we stop wasting our precious time and energy comparing, we have more time and energy to pour into the things that we love, the people that we love, the work that we love. But if we're constantly using up all of that energy on comparison, then we're going to feel depleted. And from a health perspective, we know what that does. We know what depletion does to our body, and all of these blockages that build up inside of us will, they'll manifest. And we don't want that. We want to be the best version of ourselves. We want to be the healthiest version of ourselves. And we want to show up in the world as the best us.
Yeah, and I think now more than ever, especially since people are on their computers, their phones more, they're at home more, they're scrolling more, that they're just exposed to more. And they, I just know, I as the founder of IHP, I just see other health coaches struggling to get their following, their group of people. But I always say to them, listen, a lot of times I talk about regrets in life. You want to do the things you would regret not doing. You want to take those trips, spend time with your kids while they're young, like do all of those different things. But you also don't want to regret doing things because you wanted to achieve something that deep down you were doing for other people and not you. And like, that's such a big thing because, and this is harder for women. There's no doubt about it. There's two things that I just see out there is that there's a lot of younger women trying to be influencers. And this goes for guys as well. But I just know that and I have 2 daughters, so I'm always a little bit more conscious there. But they're pretending to be someone that they're not, so that they get some type of feeling of worthiness or whatever it might be from outside validation. And I just think it's so dangerous, especially right now. And especially, as you said, with kind of a developing minds at such a young age, or even teenage-based age, is like, this is not normal. And although there was definitely comparisonitis when I was in high school and all of that, that we didn't have social media back then. So there just wasn't this level. So it's even hard for me to fully comprehend. But I do hope and I do believe that with more of this talk, we can be better for our kids. There's no doubt about that we have to be.
Absolutely. And this isn't to even put down social media. Like I still use it. You're probably going to still use it, but it's about knowing why you're using it and getting really clear on your intentions, I think. And I talk about this a lot in the book. It's like, there's a new way, an upgraded new way to do social media. And I've got heaps of strategies on how you can kind of upgrade your social media habits. But being really intentional about, well, why am I doing this? Is it because I want to nurture and connect with my online community? Is it because I want to offer value to my online community? Is it because, I want to connect with them? I want to hear how I can support them. I want to reach out to them. So what is your intention with it, and why? Something that I do, which is a very practical thing, is before I open Instagram, I always ask myself, what am I doing? Why am I opening this? And usually I'm like, okay, I'm going to post this photo and this caption, and then I'm going to respond to some DMs, and I'm going to respond to some comments, and then I'm going to get off, right? Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I even write that down on a Post-it note, because sometimes you can open the app and then all these things come on, and I'm like, I get a bit overwhelmed, and then I'm like scrolling, and I'm like, no, wait, what did I come on here to do again? So I'm like, right, yes. Okay, I'm here to post this photo and this image, and I have it ready to go. So before I even open the app, I have it there ready to go. So be really intentional about it, because it's so important. And like you said, we didn't grow up with social media in high school, and I feel for the generation now that are, like, I really do feel for them. It's, we go down to the beach here and I see like 12, 13-year-old girls that are just constantly taking photos of themselves and posing very sexually and things like that. And I think, oh my gosh, if my dad had have seen me do that when I was that age, like, oh my gosh, he would have, I don't know how he would have reacted. It would have just probably not been good. But I just think that's what they're dealing with now. They're yes. dealing with that, and it's a lot of pressure. All of the manipulation of the faces and the filters and all of that as well. It's just, it's crazy. And so we need to talk about it. We need to do something about it. And this book really is a guide to help you remember just how truly amazing you are. Like, you don't need to do anything to your face. You don't need to compare yourself to anyone else. Like, you just as you are, like, your soul is so amazing, and we want to see that. Like, I want to get to know who you are at your core, and the world does as well. Like, we don't want to see a manipulated version of you. We want the real you, and remembering that you are just so unique and so beautiful and so magical. And we love that part of you. So don't try and be anyone else. Just be you.
Yeah, what keeps coming to my mind is be authentic. And the reason why I've just always, one of the reasons why when I went, started using more online postings and putting myself out there with the podcast, it's just like, I'm going to talk how I speak, and I'm just going to put photos of me of how I look. People don't like that. I understand. I get it. Like, I'm not a match for every single person out there, but I don't want to then have to live up to false expectations of who I really am. So if I spoke in a certain way on my podcast, then I have to remember, who am I around? Am I around people that I speak like this or not speak like this? Do I have to look a certain way? So for me, it's easier. Like, it's less stressful just to be authentically you. And so I know a lot of, obviously this is spoken about in your book. It's not trying to emulate anyone else. First of all, you can't be anyone else. And second, what makes you unique, and the reason why people will gravitate more towards you if you're in work, business, whatever it might be, is because it's you. Like, you can never be good as someone else, but you can be the best version of you, right? And no one else can touch, which I think is an amazing way to look at that. So do feel free to add your thoughts on that. But I did have one more question, and this one's important to me as well. And it's because, we are coming out of this pandemic now. At least I hope that we are, right? And so a lot of people, there are fractured friendships. There are relationships that need to be mended because different political views or different ways of viewing themselves, or that person lost their job and you didn't. And like, there's all of these comparisons, like, who's better, me or them? Like, does someone have to win this argument? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, since that was a big section of the book as well.
Yes. Oh my goodness. It's, I have this saying that I live by, and that is, there's a season, a reason, and a lifetime. And that I did not make that up, but like with friendships, there's seasons that you'll have friends in your life. There's reasons that you'll have friends in your life. And then there's lifetime friendships that you'll probably have in your life the whole time. And I think practicing what I call, in my second book, I talk about this in Open Wide, crystal clear communication. Mm-hmm. And if there is a friendship that needs a little bit of tending to, then having a very open and crystal clear communication with them is really, really helpful and supportive in some cases. And then other cases, they may not be willing, or they may not be ready, or they may not want to have a conversation with you. And that's okay as well. And so we can do a lot of that work, or a lot of that healing work within ourselves. Like, we don't necessarily need to go to that person, you can heal that within yourself. But I think just knowing that everyone that comes into your life at different periods of your life is there for a reason, and we have to trust, and we can't force people to have the same views as us. We can't force people to love us. We just have to speak our truth, practice crystal clear communication, be the most authentic version of ourselves. And however that's received on the other side is actually not our responsibility, and it's not our job to make sure everyone likes us or make sure everyone agrees with us, because they won't. They will not agree with you, and it's just about constantly being true to yourself and speaking your truth. And I know for me, since being pregnant, about month 4, in my pregnancy, and in the Vedic tradition, they say that that's when the soul really comes in and calls the mother to rise, right? And so I felt that so much in month 4 of my pregnancy, almost like baby girl was like, okay, mama, like, you got to clear this, you got to heal this, you got to work through this, like, almost she like gave me a list after my meditation of relationships I needed to resolve and heal, and people I needed to have conversations with. And so I came out of a meditation and I wrote down in my phone these people. There's about 4 different people. And I set out to have these very uncomfortable conversations that I didn't want to have, that I maybe would have avoided. But that eats away at you. Like comparisonitis, like blockages within us. The more we suppress anything, the more it's going to fester, the more it's going to eat away at us, the more it's going to take over our life and cause inflammation all over our life. And so I had these conversations, and it's been so healing, and some went amazingly, and it's deepened our friendship and taken it to the next level, and some it's put closure around that friendship, and in a really beautiful way. But we're not in each other's life anymore, but we both got closure, and we could kind of tie a bow around that friendship and both feel good about it, which is really important. You want to feel good about it. You don't want it to be on your mind and taking up mental real estate. So yeah, I think, practicing crystal clear communication with anyone that you need to have those conversations with is a great place to start.
Yeah, I think that's it's amazing. And again, sometimes the conversations you have with those people, they don't have the same viewpoints as you, but oftentimes the goal is not to get the person to agree with you. It's simply for you to be heard and them to be heard. And I love the saying that we'll mutually agree to disagree. And sometimes it is okay to leave a conversation like that as long as there's respect there. And I know that I just simply try to say, listen, and like in this country, it's, half the people believe one thing, half the people believe another. And it's hard to say that 50% of the population on either side is completely wrong. Like there's probably elements of truth to each side. And it's just trying to stay open to that and just never believe that you are better than, or your thoughts are better than, or you know it all, because a lot of what we knew when we were 15 years old is radically different and wrong for how we look at it today. And that doesn't mean it can't be that way at 25, 45, or, 65 years old. So really insightful information here today. I have been fortunate enough to already get a pre-sale copy of your book, but Comparisonitis did debut yesterday. I have no doubt that it will be a bestseller, of course, like your previous books. But where can people pick up a copy of your book?
So you can go to comparisonitis.com or just my website, which is melissaambrosini.com. And there's some epic bonuses that you get when you get the book as well. So make sure you check that out. But I'm just so excited to get this in people's hands and to really help and support anyone and everyone who's willing to dive deeper and go and do the work, because it's so important and it's only going to make you a better version of yourself, an upgraded version of yourself.
No doubt about it. Yeah, without a doubt. And this is also information you can take with you for the rest of your life, and then, of course, pass down to your children and their children as well. So where else can we follow you, connect with you on social media?
So I'm Melissa Ambrosini on social media, and I've got my podcast, The Melissa Ambrosini Show. And then, like I mentioned, my website, melissaambrosini.com. And yeah, come and tell me what you got out of this episode on Instagram. Come and DM me, or maybe share an Instagram story of you listening to this, and tag both Stephen and I and tell us, one of your biggest key takeaways. I would love to hear what really resonated with you and what you got out of it, and what you're going to implement into your life.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Always a pleasure to get to speak with you, and also for you to share all of your wisdom with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. So much fun.